Hello and welcome to the Creators Guild podcast. I'm Chris Howell and with me,
Jared Lovelady.
and we're here today to talk about all things creative. And with that, we'll have a guest on a little bit later today. But first, we're going to start, as we always do, with a reading. We are in chapter 23 of A Flight from Shadows. And once again, if you haven't gotten your copy of A Flight from Shadows, you better go get it because we're watching. And you may notice our audio is a little bit better today.
Yes, we did a little homework.
Yeah. We found out we've been doing it wrong the whole time. It helps to play around with your equipment and get to know it a little bit better. So hopefully this audio comes through pretty good. Our last episode, we had a little bit of a crackle and one of our microphones, and it wasn't something we could edit out, but we couldn't go back and record over it. So hopefully it didn't distract you too much. And we'll be able to, with some of the changes and what we've been able to look at, hopefully we won't get any more of that in the future.
Hopefully.
But we'll have a little bit of a blooper video that we're going to put out that, us troubleshooting and figuring out, why isn't this working? And then going, oh, because we were wrong. 22 hours in, we've been wrong the whole time.
Mistakes, it's the spice of life, right?
Yes, exactly. Yep. You get a little bit extra flavor when you listen to us. Okay. Chapter 23, A Grand Reception, Cycle of Rio, year 12182. History is interspersed with times of joy and laughter amidst the turmoil and pain. It has ever been so. The life of a queen is no exception. Chronicles of a Queen, Arid Fredoc. Tuara took in the opulent reception hall of the palace with its high vaulted ceiling, paneled with pictograms of colorful vistas. The room was filled with fine examples of art and decor from all of the realms. Delicate ivory figurines of the goddess, as well as some of the elder gods of the Saparans, adorned arched alcoves interspersed amid stained glass windows along the far wall. In one corner of the room stood a large steel sculpture of drow metalworking. It held some 200 guests, who spread across the mosaic floor in small clusters. In almost every hand was a tall, slender wooden cup, handmade of wood-elf craftsmen, and filled with the rich red wine of western lands of the Confederation. What the room had in variety of art and craft, it lacked in variety of guests. Nearly all present were human. Most hailed from Perome, their bronze skin and green eyes contrasted with those present from the neighboring Confederation of Brundia. Their shades of ruby and scarlet hair reflected the lamplight as hues of yellow eyes watched from faces of ashen or obsidian skin. A small scattering of high elf dignitaries spotted the room, but neither the drow nor wood elves were represented. Now welcoming Premier Corbin of House Umari, Princess-elect Tuara Umari, and guests of House Umari of the Kuvian realm of Avalonia, the court-martial announced to the room as a small procession entered. The premier, flanked by Captain Ithrin, led the group, followed by Tuara, and finally Athandra bringing up the rear. In the middle of the room stood a short, rotund man encircled by courtesans, listening to him, hanging on every word. It was Vice Chairman Duran, second chair of the Trade Guild, and host of the evening's festivities. He had dark-lined eyes, with the scrollwork of tattoos on his cheeks that marked him as a guild member. His goatee was peppered with gray, and his midnight hair, pulled tight into a bun, had streaks of silver beginning to show at the temples. Standing next to the vice chairman, and participating in the conversation, was Baron Amari. His eyes met Tuara's, and they shared a smile as her group approached that of the vice chairman. Upon hearing the announcement of the premier's arrival, Duran stopped his oration and stepped forward to extend a welcome. "Romuald, what a humble welcome to my humble home," the vice chairman bellowed, his large frame adding a boisterous bounce to his voice. Come, let us get you a cup of wine. I hope you have all arrived well and without incident during your travels." "Thank you, Vice Chairman," Corvin replied. "We arrived well and unmolested. It is an honor to be welcomed into your home." Taking up a cup of freshly poured wine, Duran offered it to the premier before returning his attention to Tuara. "And Princess-elect Tuara," he said, offering a deeper bow than necessary given his station. "I am most honored that you have come, and I have not seen you in many years. Your extraordinary poise and beauty have grown beyond my ability to do them justice with mere words. While you are here, I hope that you want for nothing. I am your humble servant, and my house and all that it has to offer are yours. Tora felt her cheeks flush slightly, but she smiled, curtsying to the chairman. She had spoken with him during his visit to Tradoc. He was known for his lavish offerings of praise, so much so that those he praised tended to become embarrassed. Despite this, he was also known for being sincere in his remarks. When noticing others' discomfort, he would immediately turn the conversation with a quip about his own shortcomings. He enjoyed the jokes that came with at his own expense, especially when proffered by others. You flatter me, Vice Chairman, Tawara said, with a wry smile. I am afraid I must apologize. I, too, have no words to appropriately describe how much you have grown since last we met. The Vice Chairman bellowed a laugh momentarily silenced. The Vice Chairman's bellowed a laugh that momentarily silenced other conversations in the room. My dear, you are a breath of fresh air in this stodgy house of clerks and businessmen. He held a hand toward Tawara's father. Come, Baron, you have not welcomed your daughter since she arrived. Give her a kiss, and then we must talk. If we do not leave now, I am afraid I will stay and banter with her all evening. The Baron stepped forward and put an arm around Tawara's shoulders, offering her a quick peck on the cheek. Hello, my dear. I am happy, more happy than I can say, to see you here safe and well. Hello, Father. I missed you. I look forward to catching up while we are together. And there will be plenty of time for that, the chairman said in apologetic tones. He turned to include those gathered around him in his remarks. My friends, I apologize, but I must leave for a time. The Baron, the Premier, and I must speak. Business before pleasure, this evening, I am afraid. He gestured towards a large wooden door at the back of the room. Follow me, my friends. We will sit and talk of these important matters for which you have come. Tora gazed around the room, entranced by the pomp and splendor of it all. She was enthralled by the variety of dress among the others in the room. Fashion changed so quickly among the humans, it seemed. A style among the high elves could last for a decade or more before falling out of favor. The human styles seemed to have changed in a few years since she had last seen them with the vice chairman and his consorts, when his vice chairman and the consorts visited her father. Then there was the distinct difference between the women of Perome and those of the Confederation. It was all so splendid. She took it all in, wondering if she would have an opportunity to peruse the fine dressmaker and jewelry shops she had seen on the way to the palace. If she had the chance, she would certainly break their customs and walk away with goods in hand. This meeting to bring the Premier up to speed should be short, Athandra told Tawara as she took her second cup of wine from the serving girl, who was making her way through the crowded room. The chairman does not seem to be one to draw such things out. Tawara nodded absently as she admired a particularly unique dress worn by one of the women from the Confederation delegation. It was extremely fine burgundy silk, tied at the hip, with a slender line to the ankle. The top was off the shoulder and had a plunging square neck that exposed the top of the woman's cleavage. The woman's skin was the color of ash. Her burgundy hair, matching the silk of her dress, sat high on her head in an intricate pattern of curls and braids, and her tilted golden eyes flashed in the light of the room. The overall look was breathtaking. Tawara, with her usually curvy build for a high elf, wondered how it would look fitting over her hips and bust. Tawara, are you listening? Athandra asked. What? Tawara responded. Oh, yes. As much as I dislike the Premier, he has no need of long explanations, and the chairman will wish to take as little time away from the evening as possible. Her eyes continued to wander through the crowd. What is your mind so distracted this time? Athandra asked, after taking a deep drink. I'm not distracted, Tawara retorted. I am merely taking in the atmosphere of the room. We never have such gatherings at home. Father thinks they are a distraction and waste of time and resources. Let me enjoy the moment. Athandra smiled as she looked around the room at all the people enjoying good wine and lively conversation. It is rather a nice affair. It is about time we have the opportunity to test your social skills as well. Athandra, really? Can I not get away from your tutelage for even one night? I may not get another chance to enjoy a gathering such as this for years. Tawara took another cup of wine from a male server as he passed, a rather handsome one at that. She admired him as he disappeared into the crowd. As long as you are just enjoying the party, Athandra commented. Go on, but keep aware of the wine. It can sneak up on you. Oh, one more thing. Tawara rolled her eyes. Watch how much wine I drink. I got it. Got it. What else? She asked, thinking to herself of how she had drunk more than one of her father's wine stewards under the table in her time. Remember your station, Athandra warned as she eyed the princess with a cautionary look. There are handsome ones here aplenty. Don't get too swept up in the moment. Tuara rolled her eyes at Athandra, but gave her a warm smile and turned to the crowd. She made it only a few steps into the throng before a young man backed into her, spilling her nearly full cup of wine over her hand. "Oh, no, please excuse me. Here, let me get you a fresh drink," the young man insisted as he took the spilled cup from her. He was tall and lean, a rather handsome man, with the dark, flowing hair and prominent nose and piercing blue eyes. He was a high elf and exuded the confidence of royalty, but Tuara did not recognize him. He must have been from a province in Cuvia with which she was unfamiliar. If you would watch where your feet were going, you could avoid such incidents in the future," Tuara mused, stifling a chuckle. "All too true," the young man agreed. "I am Graythan, second advisor to the vice chairman. A pleasure to make your acquaintance, Miss Tuara Umari of House Umari," she told him casually, holding out her hand. Well, well, I am in the midst of royalty. It is truly an honor, my lady," Graythan said as he took her hand and bowed deeply in a respectful manner. "Not just yet, but soon enough. Being princess-elect is not quite being royalty," she told him. "Near enough for one such as myself. Come, let us get that fresh cup of wine," Graythan said as he led her to the large buffet table at the far side of the room. The table was filled with every kind of delicacy imaginable: exotic fruits, assorted pastries, finger sandwiches, skewers of shrimp and calamari, a variety of roasted meats. There were also a number of appetizers she did not recognize, many of which were coated heavily in spices. On a smaller table sat pitchers of various wines. Graythan pointed to one near the front of the table and gestured for two. A serving woman in house livery filled a pair of the tall, slender wooden cups and handed them to him. With a slight flourish, Graythan handed Tuara her wine. She smelled the contents and took a sip. He apparently knew his wines. Either that, or he had made a lucky choice. It was a dark, sweet wine, another from the western vineyards of the Confederation. She had hoped for a vintage from the Drow that was Drow in origin, but no such luck. A Confederation sweet wine was an acceptable alternative. "More wine, miss?" asked a serving woman who appeared seemingly from nowhere. The sudden interruption startled Athandra. She had been watching Tuara so intently she had failed to notice the young woman server that had approached her. No, no, thank you," she replied to the server absently before giving it a second thought. "Actually, yes, I will have another." The server lowered her tray and offered it to Athandra. She chose a white wine that smelled of fresh pears. Tuara would probably have scoffed at her selection, but she preferred what Tuara considered cheap wine. With her selection made, she gave the server a polite nod and made her way to the edge of the room. If Tuara was allowed to spend the evening enjoying the company of handsome young men whining and indulging her, she could at least enjoy the wine and a bit of a head buzz that would come with partaking of another cup or two herself. Truth be told, she had enjoyed a few dances, though she had diplomatically turned several young men away who gave the distinct impression they would spend the rest of the evening following her about if she hadn't. Athandra was thinking she really must find more social events for Tuara to attend as she returned to watching her with the young man. Tuara laughed and smiled, and even twirled for him to show off her new dress. Athandra was proud of her, though she would keep an eye on the pair. They had serendipitously met back up every few dances throughout the evening. "She seems to be enjoying herself," a voice said from behind, startling her. "I always worry when formal occasions arise. She has not had much experience in such things." "No, I suppose not," Athandra replied, recognizing Tuara's father, as she regained her composure and turned to face the man addressing her. "She seems to be behaving herself as well, though she has probably had more wine than strict propriety might dictate." The Baron chuckled. "She does enjoy the fruits of wine, if that can be. Of that there can be no question. Allow me to formally introduce myself, Baron Arna Mumari." Athandra lowered her cup, giving him a deep curtsy. "A pleasure to finally meet you, Baron." "Come now," he said, offering a polite nod. "Such formalities are fine enough, but unnecessary. You are Tuara's handmaid. That makes you practically family. A simple nod will suffice in the future." "Yes, Baron," she replied, still feeling a touch of nerves at the unexpected encounter with the man for whom she was now in the employ. "Your meeting with the vice-chairman seemed to go much longer than expected. I hope all is well." The Baron's face took on a sour expression. "Premier Corvin," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "The man is very good at what he does, but he can be tedious at times. He is exceptionally thorough. He could be less so when there is a party to attend and guests waiting. He trailed off as his gaze found Tawara across the hall. Tell me, Athondra, it is Athondra, is it not? The Baron began, not giving her a chance to reply before continuing. Now that you have had time to spend with her and get to know her, what do you think of my daughter? She is a strong woman, Baron, Athondra answered, taking a sip of her wine. She is headstrong, intelligent, and passionate. Overall, she is rather remarkable. She is becoming a fine woman indeed, in part, I am told, thanks to your patient tutelage. Tawara is becoming a fine woman, Athondra said. That is true. I am not sure she is in need of my efforts to do so, however. She knows what she wants to achieve and is determined to accomplish it, difficulties be damned. Do not sell yourself short, young lady, he said, as he waved down a server carrying a wine tray. I have seen your letters of recommendation. You are known in the realm as being one of the best up-and-coming tutors. Athondra's eyes popped at the compliment. Don't look so surprised. You surely know that you are sought after. Or did you not know of how the Premier had to bribe your former employer to let you go? No, actually, I didn't know. I'm not sure if I should feel flattered or confused, she said with a stutter. The Baron chuckled as he took a cup from the server. He took a long draw before continuing. You offer her something as a handmaid that other tutors never have, and it is something that I believe has been woefully missing in her life. You can offer her friendship. Tawara has not had the opportunity to become close friends with anyone before. I fear that is my doing, keeping her secluded, and shuddered more than I should have. Athondra nodded, unsure how else to respond to the statement. She had begun to consider Tawara a friend already, but she had not considered that she may be the first actual friend the woman had ever had. In truth, he continued, none of her other tutors or servants, current or past, have taken to the challenge. Although you were not meant to arrive until after her coronation, I feel your arrival has been crucial to my daughter's well-being. Tessera has kept me informed about how very much you have been a source of strength when Tawara needed you most. I want to thank you for your efforts. Athondra blushed. Baron, I was brought into your household to be Tawara's handmaid and tutor. In my reckoning, I can't fully serve in those capacities without being so close to her and knowing her. Without being close to her and knowing her. Inversely, I don't think I could meet my obligations to her and that of the house if she doesn't know and trust me. As for being her friend, well, as I told her when we first met, one never knows how such things will play out. As luck would have it, they have played out in a most positive manner. I am truly fond of her, and feel we have the beginnings of a friendship between us, one I hope to cultivate as time goes on. The Baron sighed and took Athondra by the hand. I cannot tell you how glad I am to hear you say such a thing. Tawara has had, and will continue to have, the best tutors I can provide her. She has a competent governess, as well as a dedicated house staff, and she has me, her loving yet busy, doting father, and what she needs now is a true friend. She has all of us there to guide her in propriety, education, social matters, and other such things. I would ask you to fill this most needed position. There will come times when propriety or matters of state will demand a toll on her that she cannot bear alone, and gods only know what pressure she adds to it with her ambitions of becoming the Queen's accolade. I would implore you to stand by her, support her, and above all be her friend. Athondra was at a loss for words. She had every intention already of doing exactly what the Baron was asking of her. She had known as she had held Tawara in the market after her friends had been so brutally dispatched, that such a bond would grow between them, but she would never have imagined the Baron would come out and request it of her. The Baron's gaze grew more intense, and he squeezed her hand. For a moment she thought she might be on the verge of tears, but then he spoke. His voice was quiet, yet full of intensity to match his gaze. She is so much like her mother, so full of ambition and far more intelligent than I, and her instincts are strong. But I fear for her, Athondra. She is naive about life, as I am sure you have discovered. I have put the realm's stability first in my responsibilities, leading to neglect where Tawara is concerned. I do not want you to do the same. As much as it goes against what I have created for House Umari, I want you to put Tawara first, support her and be her friend, and most importantly, keep her alive. Keep her alive? Athondra asked. I am not sure there is much I am able to do in that area, Baron. By that I mean, if the choice comes between protecting the realm or keeping Tawara safe and being her trusted friend, be her friend and follow Tawara's instinct, no matter where that road may lead. Stick by her and support her. Bring her back into alignment with the realm's purposes eventually, if you can, and if it is safe, but not at the expense of losing her trust and friendship. She has plenty and enough for others trying to force her. He chuckled, his grip on her hand relaxed, and his voice took on a humble quality. It would not sit well for others on the court to hear me say such things, but I want you to do it anyway. Promise me you will support her, no matter what. Lathandra stared into his eyes as she considered what he was asking of her. To risk herself, her house, her reputation, to remain Tawara's friend, should she find herself in the situation. But hadn't she already decided that? When she offered Tawara to help her on her path to be an accolade, hadn't she pledged her life to Tawara then? She glanced across the hall to see Tawara in conversation. She realized in that moment how much she really cared for the other woman. She would do it. She would put Tawara's needs above her own desires, and be her friend, the friend Tawara needed for so long. She returned her gaze back to Tawara's father. Your words honor me, Baron. I swear it will be done as you wish, was all she could say. All she could think to say in reply. It sounded cliché, she thought, but they were the only words to come to her at that moment. Excellent, he said, draining the remaining contents of his cup, releasing her hand. Well now, if you will excuse me, the evening is slipping away, and I have yet to dance with my daughter. Of course, Lathandra gave a curtsy. She watched as he crossed the room to Tawara and smiled when she saw the young woman's eyes light up at the sight of her father. Tawara was enjoying herself immensely, and had danced her way around the room multiple times. There seemed to be no end to finely dressed men desiring a turn about the room with her. She had learned a great deal about the social norms of the Confederation from ashen-skinned gentlemen and their large almond eyes in the far eastern states, and the contrasting obsidian-skinned men from the western region. Those from the Confederation were fit and trim. By contrast, the men of Perome, with their amber-colored skin and jet-black hair, were all rather plump, with round faces, many with oiled goatees. Yet they knew the dance as well, and carried themselves around the room lightly, despite their bulk. Tawara, my darling, you have set aside a dance for your father this evening, I hope? The Baron asked as he approached from the far side of the room. Father, she replied, taking him in a warm embrace, you have all the time you wish of me this evening. In truth, I could use a bit of a break. Who would have guessed that a princess-elect would draw so much attention? He chuckled. I dare say it is more than just your title that brings attention to you. You look absolutely stunning this evening. That dress is magnificent. You are among the most sought-after dance partners in the room, from your beauty alone, no doubt. Father, there is no need to call for embarrassing me. She paused and looked down at herself, giggling lightly. Though I do look rather nice, do I not? You look breathtaking. Shall we dance? Absolutely. The honor would be all mine to join you on the dance floor, she told him with a curtsy, offering her hand. As they moved out among the others, already congregated in the middle of the room, the Baron raised their hands and gave a shallow bow, and they began to dance. The song was familiar to Tawara, as was the dance. It was a courtly version of an old folk song she had learned in her time amongst the Trekken, and the dance reflected its folksy origin. The two danced in step, with the lively music weaving in amongst the other couples. Tawara smiled at her father, her enjoyment of the moment only marred by the conversation she was planning to have with him. Father, she said, after the music stopped and they had made their way back to the outer ring of the room, I need to talk with you about something serious, and I can wait no longer. What is it, daughter? Why did you let him do it, father? Corvin, I mean. Why did you allow him to kill the Trekken youths, and in such a brutal manner? The smile painting the Baron's face quickly melted away, and he took a step back from Tawara to look at her eye to eye. My daughter, he said after a few moments' pause, let us retire from the dance floor and get a cup of wine. Then we can talk about this matter briefly. He took her hand and, taking on an air of nonchalance, led them to the wine table. Once there, he wasted no time, procuring 2 cups of the darkest wine available, handing one to Tawara, keeping the other for himself. After sampling his selection and apparently finding it acceptable, he gestured to a pair of tall, backed, well-cushioned chairs nestled in an alcove some ways off the dance floor. Tawara, he began as they made themselves comfortable, I truly understand your loss, my love. Corvin's expeditious actions dealing with the Trekken was, I am sure, disconcerting to you. Tawara could feel her cheeks warm as the anger she had tamped down began to bubble up in her. She took a deep breath and sipped at her wine, doing her best to maintain her composure. Expeditious actions, she retorted, her voice harsh despite her attempt to maintain calm. Father, he held them for a month, interrogating them and torturing them before their sentence was carried out. A sentence carried out only once I was present to witness the gruesome and cruel scene. Daughter, please, the Baron interjected, keep your voice down. I understand you are upset. Her cheeks reddened with embarrassment as she realized she was nearly shouting, drawing the attention of those close by. She glanced around the room and saw Athondra, observing from across the dance floor. As they made eye contact, Tawara thought she saw encouragement in Athondra's eyes. It was a small thing, but it calmed her a bit nonetheless. Tawara, are you telling me the Premier held and abused those Trekken for a full month before executing them? He assured me that they had been fairly, but quickly dealt with. Although I did not agree with his chosen method of carrying out their sentence, he was within the law. But they were innocent, she protested. They did nothing wrong. They saved my life. Things are not always what they seem, daughter, the Baron interjected, his voice cool but patient. If Premier Corvin saw fit to condemn them, there must have been more to things going on than what you are aware of. Tawara huffed and rolled her eyes. Tawara, he said, his tone soft and fatherly, these things are never easy. I understand that you consider them your friends, but people do things sometimes that we do not understand, and for reasons that are not clear to us. Sometimes those reasons never become known to us. Tawara considered her father's words for a moment. She simply could not accept that there might have been some nefarious motives behind the youth's actions. They had been attacked, and Traylon had saved her life. It was as clear as that to her. Father, she began, but was stopped, as a spindly shadow of a man approached. Baron Umari, the odd little man interjected without waiting for Tawara to finish what she was saying. The Vice-Chairman would like to have a word with you. I am afraid he is a bit troubled by a small detail the Premier has brought to his attention. The Baron showed obvious annoyance on his face, but simply nodded to the other man. Very well, Granault. Tawara, we will continue the conversation another time. I need to take care of this. Tawara nodded, frustration reddening her cheeks. Yes, father, you can be certain we will. After exchanging formal bows, Tawara allowed the Baron to kiss her on the cheek before he followed Granault to the back of the reception hall and out of her view. She continued to watch the door where they had exited, letting her frustration simmer. When they next had the opportunity to speak, she would make sure that there would be no interruptions. For now, there was nothing more she could do. With a final sigh, she turned to stalk from the room toward Athondra, and collided with Graythan again. Graythan flailed, trying to catch her, while struggling to keep himself upright as he stumbled backward. For a few moments they danced awkwardly as Tawara stepped on both of his feet in turn. She finally came to a stumbling stop as Graythan fell, sitting hard on the floor. The dark contents of Tawara's cup continued the forward motion, leaving the vessel just in time to paint Graythan's face and shirt in dark crimson. Tawara gaped at him, stunned. The crowd of onlookers stared in shocked silence. Laughter burst from her mouth, the sound quickly amplified by those who joined in from the surrounding group. I am sorry, she said between fits as she stepped forward, reaching with both hands to help him. She forgot about the cup she was holding, and the remainder of the liquid dribbled out to add the last bit of wine to his shirt. And there's the rest of it, Graythan said, looking down at the large wet stain covering his chest. Thank you, my lady. I was extremely thirsty, but I find my thirst satiated. He looked up at her from his seat on the floor and began to laugh as he wiped the dark liquid from his face. 3 serving men were quickly at his side, pulling him to his feet and wiping the wine from his face and clothes with lacy napkins. He took one from the men, and turned with a flourish to the still laughing onlookers. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. For our next act, my lovely assistant will attempt to light me on fire. He waved the towel exuberantly and bowed, earning applause before he turned to offer his arm to Tawara. May I have the next dance, my lady? Tawara laughed as she took his arm, and Graythan turned them toward the front of the hall. You cannot be serious. Well, Graythan replied as he dabbed at the wine in his shirt. No, actually, I think I need something more robust to dry myself with. This kerchief put up a valiant effort, but I believe this one fight it can no longer attempt to win. He held up the small lacy napkin that had been handed to him. If you will excuse me, I will see what is available at the wine table. Tawara stifled a giggle and nodded, watching him as he tried to avoid contact with others and made his way to where the wine was being served. She had enjoyed his company throughout the evening. He was handsome, smart, and even charming. He seemed to appear every few dances and swept her onto the floor. When there were dances she did not know, he would pull her to the floor anyway, insisting she would learn them quickly. He had shared his background easily enough. His claim to be a commoner was merely an icebreaker. In reality, he was the third born from a minor house in Indemir, a province of the eastern Cubia. His oldest brother was being prepared to assume the baronship of their house, something not uncommon in any of the provinces. He, being a third, was very uncommon, however. The birth of a third child to elven parents was extremely rare, and something celebrated throughout the realm. To be a third, born in a minor ruling house, put him on par in prestige with Tawara as a princess-elect of the realm. He had been acting as a second advisor to the vice-chairman for the past 3 years. The position was a lofty one, adding to the prestige of his house and building foreign relations with his home province. He would have been a fine match for her, were she not destined to be in line for the throne and determined to be an accolade. She smiled at the thought, and felt her cheeks blush slightly. She had to look away. If Athondra were watching, she might discern what Tawara was thinking. She looked down and felt a pang of sorrow and panic. A palm-sized crimson spot shined wetly just above her hem, the hem of her new dress. She bent slightly to inspect it, then stood up, crossed her arms, and glared at Graythan as he returned, dabbing again at his chest, this time with a proper towel. "I believe I will make my way to my rooms for the night," she said, letting annoyance slip into her voice, "if you will excuse me." With that, she turned to go. Suddenly she realized she did not even know where her rooms were. The palace was extensive, and they had been escorted to the reception hall by the stewards, making several twists and turns and descending 2 flights of stairs. She was not able to finish the discussion with her father. Her new dress now had a wine stain that would likely never come out, and to top it off, she didn't know how to get to her own room. She felt the sudden urge to punch something. "Very well, then, at least let me escort you," Graythan said, before she could take a second step away. "The palace can be a bit tricky to navigate on one's first time here." A small wave of relief came over her. She would at least not be subjected to making an exit, only to have to return and ask for directions. Graythan offered her his arm once again. She looked at it momentarily before she sighed and took it, allowing him to lead her in the direction of the east hall. "This way, my lady," he said with a smile. Tawara walked rigidly beside him, doing her best to show she was annoyed without being completely rude to the young man. She did like him, but he had nearly tripped her for the second time this evening. Her dress was ruined, and now she was reliant on him to make her way through the palace. "I am truly sorry for marring your dress," he said after a moment of silence. "It is so lovely on you. Perhaps your maid will be able to restore it." She looked at him in surprise. He had noticed after all. He looked down at her, sincerity painting his features. For the first time, she didn't feel annoyed by having to look up when conversing with someone. "Oh," she said, letting her grip on his arm relax. "Thank you. I barely noticed it. I am sure it can be cleaned, but not by Athondra." She chuckled at the thought. "I trust her tutelage, but doubt she knows how to remove wine from silk." The hall was wide, with a runner of deep red. The walls were covered in an alternating pattern of house flags and tapestries, showing scenes of great wealth. One particularly striking tapestry showed row after row of Alkari marching under a taskmaster bearing the house crest, the mottled purples and grays of their skin contrasting with their bright white hair. It gave Tawara chills, thinking of so many of the unnatural creatures all in one place, a sight she hoped she would never be present for. "Are there really so many Alkari?" Tawara asked, indicating the tapestry as they passed. "Do you mean in the city or in the realm, my lady?" Graythan asked patiently. "Well, either," she replied. "The way they are worshipped and spoken of, I thought to see hordes of them, but I have only glimpsed 1 or 2 since entering the halls of Glen Heights." "Well, Glen Heights is a bit of a special place," Graythan explained. "This is the largest of the great cities of Perome. It is a bit of a melting pot. There are those from nearly every realm who live here, or who come to visit regularly. The Alkari are everywhere, but they remain at their tasks. The general populace goes about their daily lives without worrying about the Alkari or what they are doing. They will work in their positions, which allow the people to go and do as they like." "But the Alkari are servants, are they not?" Tawara asked, feeling confused by his answer. "All evening we have been served, led, and cared for by humans. Where are the Alkari servants?" "Oh," Graythan replied with a half-smile, "I see where your questions come from. I quite understand your confusion. You see, my lady, many of the servants you observed tonight are not actually servants, so to speak. They are from various high houses, or even some of the lower houses within the city and surrounding region." "You mean the other houses have human servants and send them to the palace to work?" No, my lady, you misunderstand. They are the members of the houses who have come to serve at the reception tonight. They were climbing a set of stairs, and Tawara paused, holding a rail as she looked up at Grayson. He had continued another few steps before stopping. You mean the servants, the ones serving wine and refreshment tonight, are members of status of houses throughout the province? Of course, my lady. It is a regular practice in Perome. When there are social events of significance, or even of no significance for that matter, those serving at the events are nearly always members of other houses. But I do not understand. Why? What would make them want to serve wine at a party? Is it a penance of some sort? Grayson laughed and took Tawara by the arm again, leading her gently up the stairs. Not in the least, my lady, I can assure you. There is nothing sinister or degrading in the action. In fact, it is quite the opposite. As you have stated, the Alkari serve the people. Their work is constant. This leaves many members of society with no real responsibility. Serving at a social function, particularly to ones they may not have received a formal invitation, allows them to still be seen and to feel relevant. They are able to make connections and participate while still feeling as though they were accomplishing something. The daily services and mundane work are carried out by the Alkari, but rarely are Alkari seen serving or working at official functions. Within the realm, there are literally millions of Alkari. You will experience your share of them soon enough. Tawara gasped at that. Millions, she said a bit breathlessly. Grayson smiled at her again. Don't worry, my lady. While your kind typically despises them and as abominations, they are not as bad as that. In fact, they really are just empty shells. They do what they are taught and instructed to do. There is no harm in them, nothing to be afraid of. They merely are. They are tools, nothing more. Perhaps it is because they are empty shells, as you call them, that we see them as abominations. People without souls, as though gods have abandoned them, Tawara replied, half to herself. Her mind was wandering on the thought of thousands of Alkari marching mindlessly, and how odd it would be to have strangers of different houses waiting on her in her own home, when it was suddenly snapped back to reality as Grayson stopped before a small wooden door carved with intricate vines and flowers around its border. Here we are, my lady. With a flourish, he opened the door and bowed as he had when first meeting her. I hope you rest well, Princess-elect. You will need it. Tomorrow's activities will be far from docile. The gladiatorial games truly get one's blood pumping. Well then, I should retire right away, Tawara told him. Thank you for a lovely evening, Grayson. I truly enjoyed myself, despite our mishaps. I would wish you a good night and restful sleep as well. Go in good spirits. Grayson nodded and took her hand, giving it a light kiss. Looking up, she smiled at her. He smiled at her and turned, walking away at a brisk, lively pace. She watched him go until he turned the corner into a side hall. He was rather handsome, after all.
All right.
Okay. That is chapter 23. The Grand Reception. So, got to meet a couple new, we got to meet, I guess we met Baron Omari before, but
yeah,
get to know him a little bit better and meet another couple new characters, if briefly. So, you just have to keep listening to see where things continue to go.
Yeah, at this point, we don't know.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, we are going to jump over and have another discussion with Liz Verity and do some more learning with Liz. So we'll see you there in a minute. Well, we have another experience today where we are going to do some learning with Liz.
Woo!
All right.
Welcome back, Liz Verity.
Thank you.
And how are things going for you?
They're going all right. Still, editing, writing, same old, same old.
Yeah. It's a never-ending process, right?
It really
I mean,
is.
I think we talked about that a little bit last time, that
Yeah.
it really never ends.
Yes. Yeah. It's continuous, but that's kind of the fun of it, I think. Always being able to create more stories and make things better.
Yeah. You had a different topic that you wanted to talk about today, right?
Yes. I thought it'd be fun if we kind of talked a little bit about try-fail cycles.
Try-fail cycles.
Yes.
If you're listening, do you have any idea what she's talking about? Okay.
Well,
Liz, what is a try-fail cycle?
Yeah, so this is something that I actually looked into when I first started writing, and I put up on my website, lizverity.com. And it's basically where a character has to fail at something a couple times before they can succeed. Um, which kind of sounds like you're just trying to prolong the story.
Yeah.
But really, what it does is it builds up tension, kind of creates that adversity, that sense of overcoming. That when they finally succeed in the end, you just get really excited because you're like,
Yeah.
yes, I've struggled with them. Like, this is great. So, kind of as like a check to make sure that you're doing that, is you kind of look at your try fail cycles. So, usually a character needs to try and fail at least twice before they succeed at something. So, if a guy wants to take a girl to prom, and that's the whole goal of this book. It's a really sad book, but that's the goal of the book. Then he would.
There are movies. There are whole
That's
movie
that's
genres
true. I
based
shouldn't
on
say
that
that.
exact thing. So
Yes, I'm just not big of a romance person. That's probably why I think it's sad. But there is a lot of people that would love that story. But anyways, it's the idea that he would have to ask her at least twice and her turn him down before he succeeds in getting her to go to prom with him. Um, Granted, it can be more. If it's a small thing, it could be less. Technically, you could fail once and then have the right answer the second time.
yeah,
But that's the idea, is that you want them to fail so that they have to find a new way to overcome.
gotcha. Um, so how intense does the try fail side? Is there like um, what am I looking for? A level of intensity that the try fail cycle should f- automatically reach for you to feel like you have a successful try fail cycle?
Should it build? Should each trial be slightly more intense than the next?
Yeah, so it depends on what it is. If you're doing your overall plot goal, then yes, you obviously want it to build and get harder as he goes or she goes. But you can do this on like smaller things too. Like, okay, I got to get to work or I'm going to get fired. Well, okay, my car won't start. That's a try fail. Okay, I got to find another way to get there. I'll take the bus. Oh, the bus is running late. Okay, I'll rent this bike that they have and I'll pedal there. So you can do smaller ones as well. But yeah, adding the tension is very good. Um, so there's two ways to do it, because obviously you don't want your person to fail all the time.
Yeah.
Because if your character's always failing, your readers are going to be depressed, and not care. So they want to see him succeed at times. So whenever you have your character come against some sort of obstacle or antagonist, you always want to ask yourself, okay, are they going to overcome this? And there's two answers to that: yes or no. But if you want to build up that tension and that try-fail cycle, you want to go a little deeper than that. So if they overcome the obstacle, you want to say yes, but such and such happens. Like,
Yeah.
it's a different obstacle that comes forward.
Okay, so along those lines, so specifically on the yes but,
Mhm.
I was going to ask, is it still let's say they're supposed to like stop they're a secret, somebody who's like suddenly has this something thrust upon them where it's their job to save the world. Nobody believes them, and at the last minute they stop the missile from being launched.
Mhm.
And then they realize that in the process of doing that, they totally overlooked this other bad guy who just killed their family. And they're like, wait a minute, this was like misdirection the whole time.
Yeah.
Is that part of like, how does that fit into the like, the story still has to continue from here.
Yes.
So is that try fail cycle, or is that just, plot movement?
Yeah, so it's part of the try-fail cycle. So they tried, they succeeded, but it had repercussions.
Yeah.
Which continues the try-fail cycle, because they're not done yet. Like,
Yeah.
there's still something out there to fix. But it allows them to go on to a different path. So if you wanted to kind of do that plot twist and twist the direction, you could.
Okay. So that's the yes side.
Yes, that's the yes side. The other side, the no side, is no and. So no, we didn't accomplish this, and something else is added on top of it. So
Okay.
generally at the beginning of the book, you want to have some yes buts. so that you're having that I'm accomplishing a little bit, yet I have something else I have to do. Um, when you're getting to your climax, you want to have them all be no and, no and, no and, because you're building that tension. Like this fails, and now on top of that, I have this, and this failed, and now on top of this, I have that, and it kind of increases your tension. So when you go into the climax and you have that triumph, it's even a bigger success or
Yeah.
high for your reader.
So that kind of goes back to the saving the cat, where you have the false word just failed me,
Yes,
but
I know.
a false triumph or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, where they think that they've accomplished it,
Mhm.
but then in the end, they didn't get what they wanted, or they did get what they wanted, but it's not what they needed. Yeah. So and that kind of creates that low for them to then go and actually triumph at the end.
Yeah. So, Jared, this just made me think of something that we saw recently,
Okay.
last night, in fact.
Last night. What did
So-
we see last night?
So, Jared and I will, while we're editing and while writing and stuff, we still have to eat. So, we'll be like, okay, let's stop. We're going to take a mini brain break and grab some food. And typically, or not all the time, but frequently, while we're eating, we'll be like, well, let's watch some of Bob's Burgers while we're eating. And there's an episode where it's zombies and everybody turns into zombies. And Luis and is like this zombie hunter, and her siblings have a camera and they're recording and everything. And it's going to be the end. You think it's the end. They're like making this home video thing, and the camera falls and it goes dark. And then it goes to the family sitting on the couch, and they're like, oh, that was great. And they're like, wait, it's not over. And then the camera gets picked back up, and they're like, oh, we're still alive. What are we going to do now? And they realize like zombies are afraid of mustard, and they have mustard all over them from their fight in the restaurant before, And you're like, well, now we can go save the world. And it's a total setup for the end.
Yeah,
Ready for part 2.
that's great.
But so that one actually had a bunch of that
Try and
episode
fail.
had a bunch of try-fails in it.
Yeah.
Trying to kill the zombies. They tried like shooting them with a bow and arrow, and they tried throwing mustard on them, and they tried hitting them with stuff, and they tried barricading the door, and they tried all these different things, and they just kept failing and failing and failing and failing.
Yep.
Until they finally learned if they get them with enough mustard.
And then it was good.
Yeah, or they shoot them in the head with an arrow coated in mustard. That's how you kill the zombies.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
But it has to have mustard on it.
Yeah, and that is it's kind of thinking about episodes, the ultimate not episodes, examples. The ultimate example is kind of like Groundhog Day. Have you guys seen
Yeah.
that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he spends like I don't know how many days just trying to get out of a repetitive day, and like
Yeah.
he fails every single day. So there's a lot of no and kind of thing. But he has smaller triumphs. He's trying to get close to the I don't know, what is she? She's not the camera person.
She's the anchor.
She's
the anchor.
The producer. She's
Yeah.
the
Or yeah,
She's the
producer.
producer.
Sorry.
Yeah, he's the
Yeah.
anchor. Yeah, so he's trying to get close to her, and like, he kind of fails, but like he'll have little successes of like, oh, we had a happy moment here. Like, I was able to, gain some of her respect at that point. So it's like, yes, I succeeded, but I have to start over again. She doesn't remember me again.
Yeah.
So that whole movie is just full of try-fail cycles.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Because like it is every single day
Mhm.
is another try-fail. There was someone that did an analysis of like all the things that he did and the skills he was able to develop and the level of expertise he got to, and like learning French and reading French poetry and playing the piano
Yeah.
and doing ice sculpting and then meeting all the people in the town and how
It
well he
was
knew them and everything.
calculated. I was just
It
looking
was
that
like
up as you were
36
saying.
years.
That's
right?
8 years, 8 months, and 16 days.
See, one of the there was a
Wow.
different somebody else doing a different analysis was like 30 something years.
This says the calculation includes 42 days that were depicted or referenced in the film, plus additional days based on his skill acquisition. For example, um, estimated it took him 3 years to learn the piano. So
I don't know. Like
That
here's
was,
the level that he was
yeah, so
playing the
that was
piano,
really good
including
level.
improvising
here's
and
a,
everything. I'm like, I don't think 3 years.
here's another one that says 34 years. So
Yeah, so that's the one that
Okay, so somewhere between 8 and 34 years of the
yeah,
exact same day of Trail
either way,
Bicycles. Yeah, like,
that is a buttload of days
yeah, that would be a
to
lot.
be the exact same day.
Hmm. But we're real excited in the end when he figures it out.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot of fails.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Well, and I like that, like, I mean, we're analyzing Groundhog Day, but look at like the first time he attempts suicide because of how everything's going.
Yeah.
You know, he goes and he tells the producer lady, I can't think of her name, but anyway, he tells her, he's like, remember we once had a really nice day together.
Yeah.
And then he goes and he jumps in the truck with the groundhog.
Mhm.
He's like,
Yes.
it's a groundhog. He must end. That's the only way to stop this.
Yeah.
And then it just starts the string from there of he didn't just try to win her. It was all of the things that he tried.
Yeah. All the people he tried to help, all the times he tried to kill himself. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, he just kind of went through, okay, this is my goal. And when he couldn't figure it out, he just made all these small goals because he couldn't get out of the day.
Yeah. And I mean, doing Save the Cat against Save the Cat method of writing against Groundhog Day. I'm like, yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, that would be really good because, yeah, he kind of gets into that all is lost moment whenever
Yeah.
he does that suicide trip. And then afterwards, he's like, you know what? I've learned my lesson. I want to help people. And then he's like, spends all his time trying to help people. And
Yeah, it's the perfect thing of you think you know what the goal is, and you just keep failing and failing and failing. And then the all is lost, totally giving up. The giving up doesn't work. And so then it's, well, now I'm going to try a different way to succeed. And that doesn't work either.
yeah,
And there's only one way. And it was he had to learn this lesson about himself.
yep. It's the
For-
internal journey I had to
Yeah.
finish.
And all of these other things were the wrong way of being able to accomplish that goal.
Hmm. That's a really good way of looking at it too, because so often people are like, it's, the external plot. When the external plot comes to an end, that's when the story's over. But it's not really over unless your character learns their lesson.
Yeah.
And usually they learn it in the climax, so it all kind of finishes up at the same time. But in Groundhog Day, it's not necessarily that way. I mean, it's because he completed his internal journey, then, the resolution can happen with the plot. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking of that in terms of like Luke Skywalker. He takes off, the ghost of Obi-Wan tells him, find Yoda. And it's like, okay, he's going to go find Yoda. And then when he learns that Darth Vader, his friends have been held by Darth Vader and he's got to go face him.
Mhm.
And it's like, he's told like right up front by Yoda, you're not ready. This isn't the right way to do it. And it doesn't
He's
matter.
gonna do it
I'm the
anyways.
hero and I'm going to go do it. And I'm like, he ends up getting his hand chopped off and has to be, rescued.
Yeah.
And his friend, Han Solo ends up in carbonite and just
Yes.
all the bad things happen. He just absolutely did it the wrong way.
Hmm.
Um,
But then in doing it the wrong way, we got to see him struggle through that and do the triumph. But then he also got to learn his lesson at the same time. Because I
Yeah.
feel like that's something that a lot of people don't want to focus on is that things have to go wrong in order for us to learn from them.
Yeah.
If everything went right, we wouldn't be challenged. And it's the same thing for your characters. So
Yeah.
they got to go through these try-fails so that they can learn their lesson and succeed in the end.
Yeah. Well, and if you look at Luke's perspective and when you jump from, he fights Darth Vader and gets his hand cut off when he's what's the city, the Cloud City.
Vespa.
Yeah, he's on Vespa and gets his hand cut off. And then when it comes back to he's fighting Darth Vader on the Death Star, he knows it's his father and he gets like angry and is like defeating Darth Vader. And then he chops his hand off. If he hadn't failed going after Darth Vader the first time, you see Darth Vader laying on the floor and he's all breathing heavy in his machine way, and his hand is gone and it's all wires and everything, because that wasn't the first time he lost his hand.
Yeah.
And then Luke looks at his own hand and it's like his hand has been replaced with a machine. He's already on the journey to, the Emperor's like, strike him down and take your rightful place at my side. It's like he's already on the journey to even physically replace his father, to like become less and less human. And you have that moment of, had he not gone after his friends the first time and lost to Darth Vader, would he have been able to come back and face him and have that moment the second time and been able to not give in to his hate and not end up becoming the Emperor, turning over to the dark side himself?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Probably not.
Maybe he would have. Who knows?
Yeah. Not in the story we know, that's for sure.
Yeah. So, tri-fail cycles, are there any critical elements to the tri-fail cycle that, whether it's trying to get the girl to go to prom with you, or defeating your half-machine father on the dark side, are there any critical elements you see that X, Y, and Z should happen every time in a tri-fail cycle?
So it's kind of like you were saying, there isn't like certain steps to it. Obviously, your character needs to come across an obstacle, try to overcome it, and either succeed or not. But with each one, they need to learn something. And that knowledge is what's going to be able to push them over the edge on the last time when they try and succeed in the climax. Is they're going to use all of these lessons they learned along the way from all their failures to really kind of push over and succeed in the end. So that's kind of the big thing. You don't want them to just be random. You want to be like, oh, he's can't get to work and you try fail cycle here. And that has nothing to do with the rest of the story, but it's okay because he's struggling. And then we're going to go over here and we're going to, go save the world or whatever it is. But if at the end he needs to, I don't know, meet the bus driver and become friends with him in order to have that man back him up in the climax, then that connects it. So you don't want to just think of, oh, how can I make my character suffer? You want to make sure that each one is going to push them to whatever they need to do at the climax that they can't currently do at the beginning of the book.
So they need to stay relevant.
Yes, exactly.
Does it work to have, if you had a story where you have tri-fail cycles that appear to have nothing to do with the character progress, where they don't learn until you get to like the very end, and then all of a sudden you have these cumulative tri-fail cycles that now all of a sudden they all tie together?
Yeah, that works. I mean, it's kind of like the promise and payoff is what it is. Like, if I have to sit here and I have to read this character doing this, the idea is that we are trusting the author as the reader to know that at the end it's going to make sense and it's going to have something to do with it. And so that is really kind of what you're looking for. So if it doesn't have to make sense in the moment, but you still want to give your character time to reflect on, the failure and what they learned kind of thing. But you don't have to like say, okay, this is going to help me when I need to save the world kind of thing. You can just leave it there. And then at the end, when he uses that to push through, then your reader will know, oh, that was when, okay, so he learned that at this point, or he got that information or whatever it was he needed.
What about tri-fail experiences that make the character a better character, but don't have anything to do directly with the development of the overall plot of the story?
I'd probably caution against those. I mean, I love character development. Don't get me wrong. Like, I could just do a whole book on characters, and just be friends with them. But for books, usually everything, every scene, every detail, it needs to push the plot forward. It needs to show progress either towards their goal or it can be a setback away from their goal. But either way, it has to relate to that end goal. And so it gives it reason to be in the book, because that's kind of what readers are looking for. Like, they don't want to read a book that doesn't have anything to do with what they were promised was going to happen in the book. And just learning about a character is great, but you can do that, but you want to make sure it always goes back to the plot.
Yeah.
So do both at the same time.
I'm trying to think. I can't think of any specific examples of what I just described. I was just kind of thinking like, well, what if there are things like they literally just make the character a better, more relatable, more realistic, whatever character.
Mm-hmm.
They deepen your connection to the character. But like the character tries and fails at being able to bake really well. But their ultimate goal is to become a really good wizard and defeat the demon lord.
Yeah.
That's more character development, though, isn't it?
It is. It's character development. And the thing is every scene in your book should do that. Every scene should get the reader close to the character, understand them better, and build that connection. So if every scene is doing that, having one that only does that doesn't seem quite as much sense as pushing towards that plot goal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I obviously don't like every scene is a try fail unto itself with some random
Yeah.
random theme. So we talked about Groundhog Day, and I'm like, when as soon as you said that, I was like, that is an awesome example
Yeah.
of try fail
Just kinda came
over
up.
and over and over and over again.
Yes.
um, from a book perspective, any perspectives of where you've seen even just a good example of a fail, somebody trying to do something and then they just utterly blow it. Kind of throwing you right on the spot.
I mean,
there,
I
but-
have one, but like I would ruin the book for anyone who hasn't read it, because it's kind of like at the climax. It's the thing that goes wrong at the climax. Like, they always have a plan going in, and then something happens, and like, so I have that one, but it's like I don't want to ruin the book for everybody.
so to keep from ruining books for somebody, let me pull it. I rescind that question.
Okay.
But I'm like, most people have either read or seen Pride and Prejudice.
Okay.
I was
Yes.
trying to think of like almost every good story has to have some kind of try-fail in it.
Yes.
So from a Pride and Prejudice perspective, I'm trying to think like, what are the try-fail elements? So pulling out totally different genre. We've talked
Yeah.
about Groundhog Day, Star Wars. What about Pride and Prejudice?
So Pride and Prejudice is full of them. And everybody has their own goals. So Elizabeth, she doesn't want to marry Darcy.
Yeah.
That's not her goal. And Darcy doesn't want to marry her originally either. But they grow to like each other.
Don't they like? She doesn't want to marry anybody.
Well,
I guess in the movie,
she's not necessarily against marriage, but she's not like her sisters who are running around wanting to be married. Her goal is she wants her sister, her older sister. They're really close, and she wants her to marry Bingley, this rich guy, and everybody thinks that her sister's below him. So I feel like that's kind of what she's wanting, is she's wanting that happiness for her sister is what she's chasing. And Darcy seems to be the reason that Bingley won't marry her sister.
Yeah.
And so, there's that conflict between the two of them. And so Darcy's trying the whole time. I mean, not the whole time. Okay, once he falls in love with her, with Elizabeth, he's trying to correct her opinion of him, because she automatically thinks he's, an awful person. And so, but the things he doesn't seem to work out.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think, what are some that he does?
Well, while you're thinking about that, going to the looking at those two characters and kind of a try-fail. She's trying to help her sister.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to help his friend.
Yes.
And they're both like she's telling her sister stuff and he's telling his friend stuff that are like she's trying to push her sister in the direction of Bingley, but
He's trying to pull him
he's
away.
trying to pull him away. It's like
Yeah.
this direct opposite, taking two magnets and putting them the same direction, and they just keep pushing each other apart, kind of
Yes.
thing.
Yeah,
They're
'cause
both
it's like-
trying to help and failing
Yeah.
simultaneously.
Yeah, because Darcy, like one of the ones he does is he takes Bingley away.
Yeah.
Like they go to the city or whatever. And so what does Elizabeth do? She arranges for her sister to go visit,
Yeah.
someone in the city and like, oh look, they're together kind of thing. Which, doesn't work. It's a
Yeah.
fail. Because Darcy knows that he's there, but he doesn't tell Bingley that.
Yeah.
And so they never see each other. But then when Elizabeth goes out to see her sister, she runs into Darcy instead. So like you have that conflict of like, okay, the two we wanted to meet didn't, and the two we don't want to meet did.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's just this back and forth. And then he goes to propose to her. And, clearly he's trying to like be like, I'm wrong, I want to help you, and she just blows up at him. And he has to write a letter to her to be like, this
Yeah.
is what I meant. I'm sorry, but she didn't see that in him. So it's very much a lot about like just not understanding each other.
Yeah.
That's their tri-fails.
Well, and his proposal
yeah,
is like,
he was not good.
you're totally beneath me, and everything tells me we shouldn't, and he might as well have been like, you're ugly, you're stupid, I don't like you, but we really need to get married.
But I can't help it.
You know?
I like
I
you,
can't
so
help it.
let's get married.
Like, wait a minute,
Yeah,
everything
so-
you just said, how does that?
Yeah, and that was him trying.
Yeah.
And failing. Because he didn't grasp the internal journey of like he needs to take his pride down a notch.
Yeah.
So, or is he the prejudice? I never get them. They both are prideful and prejudiced, if you ask me.
Yeah.
But anyways, he needed to take it down a notch and realize that he had some learning to do as an individual. So, and it's when he does do that and he kind of puts his pride and his prejudice on the chopping block, and he
Yeah.
helps her younger sister get out of a scandal. And
Yeah.
he doesn't even tell Elizabeth that. He's just doing it because he knows it's right. He's not
Yeah.
trying to impress her at that point. That's when he's learned the lesson that she's able to see it and actually
Yeah.
they can get together. So
Yeah, and that's when the younger sister is like, well, Mr. Doc, like, he paid for the whole thing,
yes.
and then she's like, what?
Yeah. And he's trying to save her reputation, even though he said that her family has a horrible reputation. So,
Yeah.
You can tell that he now values their reputation.
Yeah.
Before he thought it was beneath them. So
Yeah, and it's that whole, she's been pushing back against him directly. She's been trying to help her sisters, but pushing back against him directly the whole time, while he suddenly is like trying to push her direction, but doing so by, I really like you, let me build this big wall.
yeah.
That's, I'm trying to build the wall to tell you I like you, not realizing this is a giant barrier.
Yes.
But from her perspective, it's like when she realizes that, all of a sudden, same thing. And that's when she goes to her father and is like, I'm thinking more in reference. I don't know how different the movie is from the book. It's been too long.
Yeah. They're
They're
close
pretty
enough.
close. They
yeah.
did a pretty good job, I think. But when she goes to her father and she's like, we've been so stupid.
Yeah.
And it's like you get to see from her perspective that, yeah, they've both been pushing at each other and building walls, and some intentionally, some unintentionally, the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So.
Yeah. There's a lot in there.
Yeah. But the point is, it's still, it doesn't matter whether it's Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy falling in love, and Elizabeth trying to help her sisters, and having different goals for herself and for her sisters, and Mr. Darcy's goals and all the different goals.
Yeah.
There's all these different multiple perspectives of try-fails, even from her older sister trying to be
Yes.
with Bingley, and like, look at the mistakes they made. That, I'm going to listen to my sister. I'm going to listen to my friend. And I'm like, did you ever think, I'm just going to go ask you a question?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Like all these different ways of trying and failing to fall in love, or even after you've fallen in love, to see the fruits of that love come to fruition, or to see the results of that love come to fruition.
Yep.
it's still the try fail method. So whether you're trying to win the girl and go to prom, or overcome your pride and prejudice, or defeat the empire, or stop having the same day over and over and over and over and over again,
Yeah.
it's still trying and failing, and then experiencing growth. And on the flip side of that, if you look at, I would say, get your thoughts on this, there are a lot of villains in stories that they become the villains because of the try-fail cycle, where they try and fail, but as a result of character growth, they go to the other side of that failure, and it makes them bitter, angry, resentful, vengeful.
Yeah, I think the main difference is that the villains don't grasp the lesson in the end.
Yeah.
They stick to their old ways, the incorrect way of seeing something.
Yeah.
And then that just puts them in an eternal loop of try and fail.
Yeah.
Instead of getting that success at the end when they actually internalize what it is they needed to do to succeed.
Yeah. Well, even like they may even have some learning experiences.
Yeah.
They learn potentially how to do things very well, not realizing, what's this the skit where the one guy's like, "Are we the baddies?"
Not sure.
There's it's a, I don't remember, I don't think it was Saturday Night Live, might have been Monty Python, but it's a couple of German soldiers in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them, like, some things go down, and then he's like, "Wait a minute, are we the baddies? We're we're doing all this stuff. Maybe we're the bad guys." And it's the bad guy doesn't have or doesn't care. Like they've gotten to the point where they're past, or at least at the point where they are the villain. Some of them, there's a redemption arc, before, the good guy wins.
Yeah.
But a lot of times they don't ever have that introspection about, I am the thing that I don't want to be. Or they know they are and they're okay with it. They've accepted it.
Probably one of the best character arcs for a villain is the prequels to Star Wars with Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you see, as he grows, he doesn't learn. He doesn't emotionally evolve with what's going on.
Yeah.
And he becomes, he kills Padme and he becomes exactly what he doesn't want to be.
Yeah.
Yep.
Stupid emperor.
All right, so I have a question that takes us from where, we've been talking about an internal arc, internal growth. What about the aha moment, where they try and fail, and then all of a sudden there's an aha that is usually external,
or externally driven, that gets them to the finally succeeding.
Yeah. So that's kind of what changes it for them is the aha moment. Right. They're doing that constantly try fail, and then that external thing happens, and usually whatever they've gone through in the past is it kind of informs that moment. If they hadn't gone through everything they had gone through, they wouldn't be able to see clearly what they do when that thing happens.
Right.
In order to make that switch and be able to succeed in the end. So yeah, you have to definitely throw that aha moment in right before you do the try succeed cycle. Otherwise, they'll just keep going.
Well, thinking specifically again about Groundhog Day, from, like, I would say on that leading up to the triumph of it's the next day. Like, I see him, he's kind of resigned to his fate. Before that next day happens, when the alarm goes off, "Put your little hand in mine," and then the arm reaches across and he's like, "That song," and he's like, "Wait a minute." And then he pinches her arm. It's like the aha moment came after, like he didn't have an aha moment of, "Oh, this is how I'm going to win." It was more of, this internal, I'm resigned to my fate, and in being resigned to my fate, I'm okay I've learned how to be this person, like he doesn't ever express that outwardly. He just has now become
Yes.
this person. So he doesn't have this, aha, this is the way I can get out.
Yes. Exactly.
It's just we as the observer can see can see this happen, and then all of a sudden, like I said, the put your little hand in mine, and then the arm comes across, and then he's like, wait, pinch, and she's like, ow. He's like, do you know what today is? Today's tomorrow, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the, oh my gosh, I'm done. I'm out. And, a question you could ask is, he came out as the conqueror of getting out of stuck in that day.
Mm-hmm.
Did he ever understand why he experienced that?
I think so. I think there's a point where he chooses to use his time for good. And I think that it's not like a big aha moment, like with a big external plot where I'm going to defeat the Empire and I know how to do it now. But whenever he switches and he's like, okay, I'm not going to just do whatever I want because there's going to be no consequences. It's where he starts helping people and caring about people.
But even that takes, like, if we go through,
Yeah, it's
like
a
when he runs and he
slow
catches that
process.
boy and he's like, you've never thanked me. Like,
Yes.
this has happened a lot.
Yes.
He's been doing this. He's been doing the just helping for the sake of doing good
Mm-hmm.
for a long time. You can tell it, like, by the progress of the story. It's been happening for a long time. So I wonder, like, again, like, it's more of he's resigned to his fate. Again, like I said, he's resigned to his fate, almost like I'm trapped in hell. And he goes through all the different ways of getting out of hell. Is I'm going to try to drive my truck off a cliff, maybe electrocution with this toaster, maybe stepping in front of this bus, all these different ways of trying to get out of hell, until he realizes, well, maybe I just try to make hell not hell. And the
Yeah.
only way to do that is to do good. But then he goes through iteration after iteration after iteration of doing good.
Mm-hmm. It's almost kind of like he gets an external confirmation that he completed his internal journey instead of getting the chance to prove it. So
Yeah.
like if you have the
And
aha
that-
moment beforehand, you can make the choice, I've learned my lesson, I make the choice, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Versus with him, he's kind of just doing it and he's changed as a person.
Yeah.
But he probably doesn't quite notice it because maybe it's been 34 years of him trying to change.
Even if it's been 8 years, it's still
Yeah.
a long time.
And then when that happens, that's his, wait, I did it? Like, I did it. Like,
Yeah.
that was proof that I did it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that aha moment for
Okay,
him
yeah.
appeared not to come. It didn't happen before the next morning when the alarm went off again.
Yeah, he wasn't like, and
It
that was the
happened
perfect day. I'm
when
sure
that
I'm
arm
fine."
reached across, because it was the same song going off. It was
Yes.
appeared to be, it's the beginning of the same day again, until her arm reaches across his chest. And then it's like, oh my gosh, it's different.
Yeah.
It's done. But I wonder, I mean, you can't go through something like that and not reflect on what happened to make tomorrow happen.
Yes, exactly.
Or I would say you can't, but maybe you can.
I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, I would assume, based on his character growth, that there's no way he wouldn't go back and reflect
Yeah.
and recognize who he had become compared to who he was.
Yeah.
Well, I think for that particular growth, part of that growth is introspection on who am I becoming,
Yeah.
becoming self-aware.
Hmm.
I think it's part of the growth that he goes through in that. And so, yeah, reflection would be kind of second nature at that point.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by him finally coming to terms with, I'm resigned to my fate. And if I'm resigned to this fate, instead of living in hell, I'm going to do everything I can to make a heaven. And the only way to do that is to, instead of focusing internally, I'm still going to learn to play the piano and learn French poetry and everything. But I'm going to try to experience and relish in as much goodness as I can create within this world that I am trapped in.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that is to take my skills and talents and all these things that I'm creating and outwardly use them
Yeah.
in behalf of the people around me, especially her, that he had tried to over and over and over again to woo her and get her to,
Yeah.
to win her over. But it was that his focus wasn't on winning her over. It was on make her happy,
Yeah.
simply for the sake of making her happy, the way he had been doing for everyone else in the town.
Yep.
But he didn't realize that that's the answer.
Yeah. No, it definitely hit him afterwards. But we don't really get to see that much because it's a movie and not a book. If it was a book, we'd get to dive in a little bit more into that. But
Yeah, but that's why we're talking about it.
yes, exactly.
Well, this has been a fun discussion.
Yeah.
Interesting. Hopefully, you guys listening have enjoyed it. So, Liz, if people want to learn more from you, how do they do that?
So they can go to my website, lizverity.com, and there's a whole backlist of blogging from various writing topics I've learned over the years that they can look through, as well as they can sign up for a weekly writing newsletter where I kind of give out advice every week, every Tuesday, just to help encourage people along.
Yeah. Topics kind of like what we just covered about the try-fail cycles.
Yes.
So, yeah, so go check that out. Go sign up for Liz's newsletters and her learning experience. Go check out what you can learn from her.
Yeah, for those of you watching this on YouTube, we'll put a link in the description.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, thanks for being here with us again.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you. It's been
Always a good time. And thank you for listening along. Again, I almost forgot, if you haven't gotten our book, go get it.
Yes, it's good.
Yeah. So until next time, go in good spirits. Thanks for listening to the Creators Guild podcast. Don't forget to get your copy of A Flight from Shadows, available on Amazon. While you're there, please rate it and give it a review. If you like the Creators Guild, please like and subscribe, and make sure to share it with your friends. Until next time, go in good spirits.